This week, the White House called its second emergency summit over something almost boringly ordinary: your electric bill. Not gas prices, not rent, the power bill. Because across the U.S., the monthly electric bill has quietly become the first place where regular people are paying for the AI boom, and one man in Virginia found out the hard way when his bill jumped from around $100 to $281 in a single month. So today we are answering a question millions of people are typing into search right now. Why is my electric bill going up? And the deeper question underneath it: when big tech spends hundreds of billions of dollars on artificial intelligence, who actually pays for the power? Spoiler, a lot of it is you. Let's break down the machine. Start with the national picture. Since 2020, average residential electricity prices in the U.S. have climbed more than 36%, from about 12.8 cents per kilowatt hour to about 17.4 cents. Some of that is fuel costs, some of it is plain inflation. But the fastest growing driver, according to Goldman Sachs, grid operators, and consumer watchdogs alike, is demand. And the new demand is coming overwhelmingly from data centers built to train and run AI. Now, to understand how a data center in Virginia can raise a bill in Ohio, you need to know how the grid actually sells power, because it is stranger than you think. Most of the eastern U.S., 13 states plus Washington, D.C., around 65 million people, sits on a grid run by an operator called PJM. Every year, PJM runs something called a capacity auction. Think of it as the grid buying insurance. Power plants bid for the right to get paid just for promising to be available in the future, especially on the hottest and coldest days of the year. The grid buys enough promises to cover the worst case, and the cost of all that insurance gets spread across everyone's monthly bill. For years, that insurance was dirt cheap because there was plenty of supply and demand barely grew. 2 years ago, the auction cleared at about $29 per megawatt day. Then the AI buildout hit the forecasts. The most recent auction cleared at about $329. That is an 11x increase in 2 years, on a cost that flows straight into tens of millions of monthly bills. And we know who drove it. Independent analysts found that data centers were responsible for roughly 63% of the price jump in the latest auctions, about $9.3 billion in extra costs that get recovered from ordinary customers. And starting this June, ratepayers across the region are on the hook for roughly another $1.4 billion on top of that. So why is demand exploding now? Because the AI arms race has become the biggest infrastructure build-out in corporate history. This year alone, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta plan to spend roughly $700 billion compete, most of it on data centers, chips, and the power to run them. That is up from about $410 billion just last year, and analysts already expect the number to pass $1 trillion next year. A single large AI data center can draw as much electricity as a small city, and there are hundreds of them in the pipeline. Nowhere shows the endgame like Virginia. Northern Virginia is home to the largest concentration of data centers on Earth, and data centers now consume roughly 40% of the entire state's electricity. Over the last 5 years, electricity prices near those data center clusters rose more than 260%. That is not a typo. And here's the mechanic that makes the whole thing feel rigged: cost socialization. Under current transmission rules, when the grid needs new power lines and substations to serve giant new customers, those costs are typically spread across all customers, households included. One major utility even told federal regulators that the existing rules force this sharing. Even when a data center offers to cover its own infrastructure costs, today's tariff structures do not cleanly allow it. The bill gets split whether you like it or not. So, who actually gets paid in this story? Follow the money upward. Power generators collect those record capacity payments, billions in new revenue for simply staying available. Utilities may be the quietest winners of the entire AI boom. Regulated utilities earn a guaranteed return on the infrastructure they build, roughly 9 to 10% on every dollar, which means a once-in-a-generation construction boom is fantastic business. And behind them, turbine makers, transformer manufacturers, and grid contractors are sold out for years. The money starts on your bill and flows up the chain, and the forecasts say this is not close to over. Consumer analysts project about $6.3 billion being added to Americans' energy bills within the next 3 years, and Goldman Sachs expects electricity prices to keep rising through the end of the decade as the buildout continues. But the pushback has officially started. Oregon just became the first state to create a dedicated rate class for data centers so their costs can be billed separately. Virginia is weighing a law that would shift capacity and distribution costs from households onto the data centers themselves. And the White House is now pressing utilities and tech companies on a ratepayer protection pledge for the second time this year. Here is the twist nobody prices in. If data centers are eventually forced to pay full freight for their own power, running AI gets meaningfully more expensive, which could squeeze the very boom the entire stock market is currently priced on. So it really is one or the other. Either your electric bill keeps quietly absorbing the AI buildout, or the AI buildout finally gets handed its own bill. So here is the question I will leave you with. Should data centers be forced to pay their own way, or is a higher power bill just the price of progress? Tell me what you think in the comments, subscribe so you do not miss what is next. And if you want to see where your money actually goes when markets panic, watch our last deep dive, Where Does the Money Go When the Stock Market Crashes?